All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this amazing Lunch and Learn with Dr. Ron and Evan. We'll go ahead and go through the, leadership teams, introductions, and then we'll go ahead and get started to give them as much time as they can have. So I am Stephanie Alexander, Director of Outreach for Fusion Academy. We are one-to-one personalized education. We have 3 campuses in Houston, the Woodlands, Galleria, and then Sugar Land. So we work with a lot of kids who have emotional, social anxiety, ADHD, bullying, LGBTQ issues, those kids that just need that emotional support. We also see a lot of kids who have, who need flexible schedules. And then the last group of kids that we work with the most are going to be our gifted and talented kids that just want to fly through school as fast as they can because we're open all year. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I'll put my information in the chat. And then I'm going to hand it over to Julie.
Hey everyone, my name is Julie Pomerantz and I'm the Admissions and Outreach Director at the Hub Houston. The Hub is all about being heard, understood, and believed in. We're located in Northwest Houston and we have 3 really distinct, wonderful programs. First of all, we do have a school for approximately ages anywhere from about 13 to 18. Very small school. We are planning on staying small because we really want to get to know our students inside and out and really know the families well. We also have our campus that we refer to as Life 101, which is for young adults ages 18 and over, helping them with employability, life skills, social skills, an array of classes they can choose from to take during that time of their lives. And finally, we have Club Hub, which is strictly social 3 nights a week, again, for ages 18 and up. We mostly work with those in the neurodiverse community. We also have those with ADHD, anxiety, depression, a variety of issues that they might be handling in their lives. And we just try to be there for them and support them in all ways. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Miss Pam.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Pam Esser. I'm Executive Director of the Attention Deficit Disorders Association, better known as ADA-SR. We have, 5 free support group presentations per month. So please check those out. We have a huge variety of speakers and topics. So it's a really great way to get caught up on things. We also do educational events. We just had our big one-day symposium on Saturday with Ari Tuckman and 4 of his friends that are authors and colleagues. And we have some exciting things planned as well. We do take memberships, but we also have scholarships. So if you have people that are in need of membership or especially attending an event, please tell them to check us out. And I'm going to put my email and website in the chat as well. So feel free to contact me.
And so I'm Alexandra Roark. I work with Dr. Ron here at the Houston Neuroscience Brain Center, where we do EEGs that look for neurological causes for symptoms. We do neurofeedback training, which optimizes the brain, and we do therapy services. I specifically work with the children and adolescents.
All right, great. And I guess most of you guys know me. We may have 1 or 2 that don't, but so happy to have you guys here. We just met with somebody else that I think may become part of our whole group. It was Lorena Morrow, Houston Brain Center out in Katy. Interesting that we love to network like this, and I think this is just another great group out there. So I want to introduce Evan right now. Evan and I have had a little bit of a history together. Let me find his bio because I did bring it up today. Evan is the president and CEO of Staying Ahead of the Game at Houston. It's a Houston-based academic coaching and tutoring company founded in 2006 with a focus on helping students and building executive functioning skills they need to be successful in the classroom and beyond. The core components of this program include organization, time management, influencing, and perception of others. Evan particularly enjoys speaking to parents, counselors, and educators all over the country about the power of executive functioning skills and the most useful ways to assist students of all ages in getting the most out of school and achieving their goals. While staying ahead of the game has several offices around Texas, Evan co-founded Illuminous in 2016 to bring his award-winning and research-driven program to major cities outside of Texas, beginning with Washington, D.C. and the metro area. And I have known Evan for quite a few years, as I was saying, because he referred Miss Emma to us years ago. And Miss Emma's in graduate school right now and doing very well, thanks to Evan's work. So we just love what he does. So Evan, without any more delay, go ahead and take the stage, please, sir. As he got
Of course. So I guess just for technology and simplicity here, if everyone else can mute their microphones, then I think, but feel free to jump in with questions. I don't know how you guys usually handle Q&A, but chat box or it's a small group, feel free to stop me, interrupt me, that's totally fine. And today we are talking about ensuring my child's success in their first year of college. And hint, it starts in high school. So I'm glad that we're scheduled until about 9:30 p.m. tonight because I have lots to say about this. But all jokes aside, I know we are limited on time. I will say before we get into it, I think the transition to college, I preach all the time, is the single biggest step and transition that kids make in their entire lives. And there are a lot of transitions, as they matriculate through school, there's transitions, relationships, getting married, having children, the death of a parent, there's lots of transitions. I think this transition to college is the single biggest transition that kids make. And we'll get into precisely why in a couple slides. Alarmingly, we're also seeing this is very timely, we're also seeing an increase in kind of failure to launch type situations. And so I would define that as kids who, for some reason or another, and we'll have a little bit more insight into that as we get through the presentation, but are not prepared for that really big step or have underestimated that really big step. Sometimes it's the kids, the parents, or the families together. And then, kids get out there, they take a wrong step. There's less feedback in college, and that feedback is now going to the kids rather than the parents. And so people don't really know until it's too late. And then all of a sudden kids are back at home sleeping in their bed again. And it's bittersweet for families, because families want to see them kind of flee the coop and spread their wings. But at the same time, they miss them. So now they have them back, but the circumstances are different. And it can be tough to recover from that. Not impossible, but it can be tough to recover from that. So I preach all the time. I think it's the biggest transition that kids make. And so I'm super excited to talk about a topic that, honestly is so timely and so important. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as I've prepared a few slides here to assist in the presentation. All right, everybody see that okay? Wonderful. All right. So I always appreciate when speakers kind of give me an idea of how long this is going to be and the topics we're going to cover, so that in the event that you're miserable, you know how much longer you got to hang in there, okay? So consider this an outline, all right? So I want to give you a few minutes worth about SAOTG and what we do. I want to talk about why that transition to college is so big, why the magnitude of that transition is just so huge. So we'll talk about the new challenges of college, and then what are executive function skills. So, big spoiler alert here. I think that the key to finding success and avoiding those pitfalls that first year of college lies in really strengthening and mastering, to some degree, executive function skills. So we'll talk about what executive function skills are and what makes them so important, how they're related to learning. We'll talk about some things, which I think is why some of you are here, that parents can do to help now. And what I mean by now is I imagine that many of you have high schoolers who are thinking about college right now. And so that's what I mean by now, while kids are in high school, and then later. And what I mean by that is once kids are really about to go, or they just arrived to college. That's what I mean by later. So we'll talk about that. And then I want to zoom in a little bit on some of the kind of specific habits and routines associated with executive function skills that I think represent critical supports at the foundation of kids' success. And then I've got a couple slides just on how to reach out, how to find us, and some things that we do completely for free that you guys can access on your own. and on your own time in order to keep up with us, learn about things that we're doing. And, there's more helpful tips about this topic and many, many others. So moving forward, I want to talk about executive function skills, but start with a definition. It's a term that many of us or all of us have heard, but we may not know exactly what it means. And so what are executive function skills? And this definition comes from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University, some folks with cognitive capacities much greater than mine. So I did not come up with this on my own, but executive function and self-regulation skills are the mental processes that enable us to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks successfully. Just as an air traffic control system manages the arrivals and departures at a busy airport of all aircrafts of all different shapes and sizes at different times, the brain needs this set of skills to filter distractions, prioritize tasks, set and achieve goals, and control impulses. Now, this is important. This is why we're here. Executive function skills provide critical supports for learning and development. So we know that, or at least we will after this presentation. But while we're not necessarily born with these skills, we are born with the potential to develop them through interaction and practice. So it's important to remember that these are skills as opposed to abilities. Abilities we think of as more kind of innate, either you have it or you don't, right? But skills, even in the literature, social skills used to be called social ability. And then when we realized that you can actually teach social skills, and gosh, you guys at the Hub can talk a lot more about that, but we know that we can teach social skills. Now in the literature, we refer to it as social skills as opposed to social ability. But if you look back far enough, you'll see that it was originally termed social ability. And we thought some people are good at doing that and some people aren't. Now that we've got a definition and we're all on the same page here, so what does that really mean? What is executive function really? So executive function skills allow us to do things like control impulses and our emotions, and to be flexible, if you've heard the term cognitive flexibility, to plan and kind of lay out steps and be organized. It also helps us to set goals and plan ahead and make sure that we're always working toward those goals. It allows us to self-manage and to stay focused amidst just what seems to be an unlimited amount of distractions. Follow multi-step instructions, and then on the execution side, meet those goals and complete those tasks. All of this is tied to executive function skills. And then finally, it enables us to really manage ourselves without being told step by step what to do next. So at a certain point, we need to be able to say, okay, well, we've done this. And so naturally that leads to this next step, which leads to this next step, and to see several steps ahead. Well, that's heavily tied to executive function skills. Now, executive function skills, the reason why they're so important for learning is it's tied to working memory, which governs our ability to retain and manipulate distinct pieces of information over short periods of time. Mental or cognitive flexibility, which helps us to sustain or shift attention in response to different demands, to adapt, right? And to apply different rules in different settings. We all know that we have to talk to our teachers in one way, but we talk to our parents in a different way and our peers in yet a different way. And so that ties into that mental flexibility. It's also tied to self-control. So that enables us to set priorities and then control those impulses, resist impulsive actions or responses. And then last but not least, self-motivation, which enables us to really dig deep inside ourselves and find that motivation without an immediate external consequence. So, I need to get up and I need to be here today. And that needs to happen without somebody necessarily slapping you for not showing up, right? You still need to have that internal motivation. And these executive function skills lie, and God, I hate to talk about the brain in front of Dr. Ron. He's going to jump in and bite me, I know. But think of these executive function skills as like the CEO of the brain, and they're housed right here in the front. We'll get into that a little bit more, and how that's developed and how the brain develops, et cetera. But think of this frontal lobe as kind of the CEO of the brain, and executive function skills and executive decisions are made right there in that frontal lobe. And by the way, humans' frontal lobe are, if not the biggest, one of the biggest out there of any species. So we've got quite a capacity. Now I want to talk for a moment, somewhat reluctantly in front of Dr. Ron and his group here about brain development. And I don't want to get really esoteric or too far into it, but the brain develops effectively from the back to the front, okay? And so this frontal lobe that's in charge of your executive decision-making and these executive function skills kind of lie right in the front here, is kind of the last to develop. So when does that happen? Well, it doesn't really happen until after college. And I joke, I do a lot of public speaking, and I joke that, you know, for girls, and this is true, it's developed in the mid to late 20s, fully developed, that frontal lobe. And for boys, it's a little bit later. It's late 20s, and I joke to, you know, early 70s, but it's really late 20s to early 30s. And so what does that mean? It means that kids aren't necessarily responsible. They don't have the capacity to make the best decisions. They're not necessarily responsible for all the silly choices that they make along the way before that frontal lobe is fully developed. Now, there's still a place for positive and negative reinforcement and consequences and, you know, et cetera. That's part of the learning process and how we learn. But that front part of the brain, it's important to keep in mind that it's not even the girls who are doing it first, and the ones who are doing it first, that is your mid 20s. Well, what age are you when you're leaving college, generally speaking? So, you know, it's what, 18 to 22, maybe 18 to 23 years old. And so that frontal lobe of the brain is still not fully developed until after the college years, which is really scary. And also keep in mind, and again, semi-reluctantly in front of the group here, but keep in mind that generally speaking, this front part of the brain is in charge of performance, right? This kind of the back part of the brain here is where knowledge kind of resides. So I see a lot of families that say, you know, gosh, my kid can remember anything, you know, you know, especially if they're interested and they remember for a long time and they can think at a really high level, but they're not delivering on deadlines, or they're turning everything in late. They're not turning things in. They're forgetful of their, you know, baseball equipment, soccer equipment as they're leaving out the door. They forget their binder for the right class. Those are performance issues. And those performance issues kind of lie in the front here. But knowledge, where we house our knowledge, kind of lies in the back. And Dr. Ron and his team can correct me at the end, but generally speaking, that's my understanding. So this is why we're all here. What can parents do now while their kids are in high school and just thinking about college in order to help kids to bolster their executive function skills that they need and are absolutely essential, critical for success in college, for that big bracing for that big transition? Okay, so what are some things that parents can do? Meaningful goal setting. So helping your kids with setting meaningful goals. My favorite system is SMART goals. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it here. You can all Google that. But think of goals as kind of our North Star that guides us, and we should revisit those goals every few weeks to make sure that we are always on track. But those goals and setting those goals, even if you never, interestingly, research tells us that the most productive people rarely actually achieve their goals. They set them high, and when they get close, they reset them even higher. So that's funny and a different discussion. But having goals is so important. This is backed by tremendous amounts of research, but we always need to be working towards something. And these can extend outside of academics. They don't need, it could be social. I need to, you know, get out there and meet more folks. And so SMART goals, look that up. You know, it talks about goals being, you know, meaningful and timely and time bound. So you can't just say, I'm going to be nicer to people. You know, you have to say, or I'm going to meet more people. You have to say, I'm going to reach out to this many people over this period of time, and I'm going to have this many social outings, right? It needs to be objective so that you can know quickly whether you met the objective or you didn't. But goal setting is really important in helping your students, if they're not doing it already, to create meaningful goals and to start making that part of their habits and routines now, so that when they go off to college, they can continue that when they are on their own and they don't have that scaffolding, which we'll talk about more later. Organizational habits are so critical. So I know kids don't get a grade for keeping a planner, which we'll talk about. They don't get a grade directly for being organized, sure. But they get grades on assessments. Well, there's no way to consistently perform well on assessments, projects, different kinds of assignments without doing some of these steps that you don't directly necessarily get a grade for. So I promise you, every student who is successful in college or pre-college or post-college, every individual who's successful has some level of organization, time management, task management, et cetera, that they don't directly get judged for or grade for, but that represent some of those foundational systems that are critical to success. So helping your students develop, and we'll dive deeper into organization a little bit in some slides to follow, but helping them to create those binders and those e-binders for digital organization so that they can do it on their own when they get to college. Time management systems, that's critical too. So what are time management systems? Productivity really lies at the intersection of having a really good planner or task management system or to-do list, think of it, and a calendar. So the idea is you have a to-do list, that's a list of all these things that you need to do, but those things are not going to do themselves. And so you have to go to your calendar and set aside time. Once you've established, here's everything I need to do, now you need to go into your calendar and set aside time to do those things because they're not going to just do themselves. And so productivity really lies at the intersection of those two, and we'll get into that a little bit more in later slides. Problem-solving techniques. So this, I would say, is really tied to self-advocacy. So the more that you as parents now can help, instead of solve your kids' problems for them, if you can help them solve their own problems, and if you haven't already started that, it's not too late, start it tomorrow, start it tonight. Help them talk through solving their own problems, validate their problem, wow, that sounds pretty sticky, so what are your thoughts? What do you think you're going to do about that? Offer some suggestions, and kind of go through that process alongside them so that they get comfortable with that process, because they will certainly have problems to solve, many in college, and they're going to be doing that independently without you. And so problem solving techniques, developing those skills around problem solving. Consistent eating and sleeping. I don't want to get too far into this, but let's think about like technology problems. Like, how many of you have had issues with, your internet stopped working or your TV is not responding, and a lot of those issues can be solved by just unplugging and plugging it back in, right? And 80-90% of the time that solves your problem. Now your printer starts working, your TV's responding again, right? And so think of eating and sleeping in particular, as almost like hitting the reset button. It's also tied to memory and recall of information, retention of information. It's kind of when we process everything from the day. So eating and sleeping, that nutrition component, and not just eating, but what you're eating is important too, which is a whole nother presentation. But sleeping is so critical too. And so getting them into the habit of, even if they don't go to bed at the same time every night, because on the weekend they don't have to be up quite as early, those hours of sleep need to be consistent and commensurate with their age. And I'm sure Dr. Ron and his team can talk to you a lot more about that. Now, modeling good health. Modeling is still, research tells us, the best mode of learning transfer. So if you want your kids to develop good habits and routines, you need to model good habits and routines. And that extends to behavior too. Kids are going to learn how to behave themselves at a fancy dinner. They're going to learn that from watching you behave at a fancy dinner. How to speak to people of authority differently than your peers. Model that too. They're going to hear that, even if they don't give you the satisfaction of telling you, hey, that was really helpful, mom or dad, or aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. They are soaking that in. So make sure that you're modeling. I often give parents homework. So when I go in to help students with organization, with time management, with cleaning up their desks, et cetera, I often give parents the same assignment, saying, hey, how do you expect your kid to put their cell phone away at the dinner table if you don't? How do you expect them to keep their desk clean if your desk is a mess? And so make sure that you're modeling especially before they go off to college, some of those good, healthy habits, routines, behaviors, et cetera. And then practicing independence. So again, that self-advocacy, but this is more focused. I put this in here for like self-care, okay? And so this is more like if you're still doing your kids' laundry, I'm not saying they have to take it over completely, but they need to start learning how to operate a dishwasher. They need to start learning how to do their laundry. They need to start making some of their own appointments for the dentist or the doctor or medication refills, with their psychiatrist, and start having your kids or young adults really at this point playing a bigger role in what it takes for them to have their needs met, not just scholastically or academically, but also just in life. Because on top of all the other ways that college is different, which I think I skipped a slide actually unintentionally, so I'll go back to that. But there's a myriad of ways that college is different that represent why that transition is so big. And so the more that you can get them accustomed to doing before they go with regard to self-care and independence and flapping their own wings, the more prepared they will be, because there's going to be a lot of other transitions that they can't control or necessarily prepare for now. Having these things that are new to them when they go off to college just adds kind of insult to injury, so to speak. And that could be the difference between making it through that first year successfully and perhaps not. I do want to go back to this slide that talks about, before we zoom in, that talks about how college is so different. Okay, so here are the new challenges of college. There is a lot less structure and an infinite number of distractions. And so you think about it when kids are in high school, from the time that they get up in the morning, their day is just completely structured, okay? If they don't hear their alarm, you're gonna grab their feet and drag them out of bed. You're gonna make sure that they get to school. And then, they have their class number one, and then the bell rings, they follow the herd to the next class, so on and so forth. And then they have lunch, there's a break during the day, and then they do the same thing in the afternoon. And it's like that, very structured all the way up until the end of school. You're talking about 30 to 40 hours a week that kids are in school, and all of that time is structured for them. All of a sudden you go off to college and kids are in class 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a week, but college is still a full-time job, and fun and recreational activities need to fit around that full-time job. And so what happens if they're only in class 15 hours a week and a full-time job is, say, 40 hours a week? What happens to that other 25 hours? And so they say that, for every 1 hour of college instruction, kids need to have 1 to 2 hours outside of class for studying and practicing, working problems for those science and math classes, and reading and rereading things and studying and taking notes and, et cetera, for those reading assignments. And so there's a lot less structure, and kids need to structure their own time. That is a massive transition. The feedback is few and far between. So, listen, pre-college, there's a test every week or every other week. And if you really fall flat on your face, then you have another one coming up right behind it. That's an opportunity to improve your average, et cetera. All of a sudden you go to college and there's a paper and 2 tests, and that's it. That's all you have the entire semester. And so there's a lot more information that's covered, and there's a lot less feedback. And if you bomb that first test, it's a lot harder to recover. So the feedback is fewer and far between. You call your kid when they're in college and say, "Hey, honey, how you doing?" And they say, "Oh, actually, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to class, but I really don't know how I'm doing. Like, I haven't had any homework, or I haven't had any exams yet, and that could be 3, 4, 5 weeks into school, and there's no feedback yet. New playground and new playmates. So, kids oftentimes go to elementary school with some of the same kids they go to middle school with, go to some of the same kids they go to high school with. All of a sudden now in college, everybody has a different schedule. Every kid on campus is taking a different set of courses. You might have a friend or two in a couple of your classes, but everybody's on a different schedule. And the environment is different. So think of the playground. I mean, like kind of the city, right? The kids need to figure out, on top of their academics and how different the approach is to learning in school, they have to figure out where to get a haircut, and where to get medication refills, and where to get groceries. And so they're learning a new place, not just campus, but the city. And they have all these new friends, none of whom have the same schedule that they do. And then the scaffolding is gone. So when your kid comes home and you can see that their mood has been different for the last couple of weeks, you can act upon that. And it just kind of happens. That information falls into your lap. The scaffolding is largely gone when kids go off to college. And then the help doesn't find you. If kids need help, nobody's going to know. They need to actually raise their hand and make a phone call or shoot an email and seek out that help. The brain is still not fully developed. We talked about that. Completely different teaching model. We talked a little bit about that, but there's a lot of lectures, and professors are interesting because they're still in school after so many years, just on the other side. And many of them are involved in research, and that's just as important, and for some more important, and more important to the college than necessarily the teaching responsibility. So it's a kind of a different model of teaching. And then procrastination is really not an option in college because there's so much that's covered on an exam. You can't wait until the night before to study for your exam. There's not enough time in a day to read all the things that you should have been reading for the last 6, 7, weeks worth of material that's being covered on an exam. So the consequences are severe because there's only a few exams and a paper. So now kind of jumping back, that's why the transition to college is so big. I want to zoom in on kind of a few of these things because I think it would be helpful. So habits, good habits and routines, just some ideas for you guys. Create a consistent flow to the week at home and stick to it. So it doesn't need to be every Monday, doesn't need to look the same as Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if Mondays and Wednesdays could have the same flow, and Tuesdays and Thursdays could have a similar flow, and then maybe Fridays look different than the other days, but every Friday kind of looks the same, and every weekend kind of looks the same. That helps to kind of ground us. And then you'll find that kids kind of do the same in their courses, they're Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that they've started that process already by when they have kind of their courses. But then, creating, whether it's just their fitness or working out or, having meetings with professors, if they'll start to, if you can start this in high school, when they get to college, they'll say, okay, well, Mondays is when I reach out to my professors, or, they'll start to make that part of their habit and routine. Keep written checklists of daily responsibilities around the house in strategic places. And guess what? You go visit your kid in college and you're going to find that they've put checklists around their dorm room, or they have a little cork board where they put some checklists of just things to remember. And so that's really important. Maintain appropriate positive and negative reinforcement systems, and then be consistent about enforcing them. So that's good, so that kids get an idea of consequences. And even though you're not there to enforce them later, they can enforce it themselves. Hey, I didn't get enough done today. I can't go out and party tonight, or I can't go to this friend's house and watch this game. Model productive routines and live by the same expectations that you have for your kids. We talked about that. A healthy digital diet. I mean, everything has a screen now, everything beeps and dings, etc. Kids can't do their work without their computer, but there's notifications coming from everywhere. So get kids used to becoming good at managing that before they go off to college, so that they don't kind of fall into that hole of electronics in college, and they already kind of arrive to college with some ways to manage that. Recognize effort more than results or deliverables to encourage the development of a growth mindset. Another thing we could do an entire presentation on: fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I think you should Google it. There's lots of information, but we need to get as much of a growth mindset as possible as kids go off to college. It's that kind of grit, resilience, et cetera. Establish a consistent place for schoolwork outside of the bedroom. I think kids should never do work in their dorm rooms. Kids should never do work in their bedrooms pre-college. One of two things happen. Either they get tired, because that's what's supposed to happen when you go to your bedroom and you sense that your bed is nearby. We've been training for that since we were infants. And then they don't remember their work. The recall's not there, the retention's not there, and that's not good. Or they start to untrain themselves to get tired when they're in their bedrooms. And so they're productive on their work, but now they can't go to sleep, and sleep is so important. So we want a place where there's natural light. We want a place that's outside of the bedroom. We want a place that's consistently a controlled environment where we can depend upon it. So kids in college need to identify a place in the library or a nook at a coffee shop or something that is, whenever they have time set aside in their calendar to work on schoolwork outside of class, they report to that place and it's consistently there for them. Binders and e-binders. So binders is the way that we term organizing physical stuff. So dividers, subdividers. We have an awesome Amazon ideas list that's like a private shopping cart with some of our favorite materials. I'm happy to share that with you. If you guys want to email me, my contact information is going to be at the end here. So make a note of that. Happy to share it completely for free. Shop it. It's awesome. And then e-binders is the term that we use for how kids are organizing themselves digitally for the growing amount of work that never actually sees paper. So a lot of people don't know, kids go to docs.google.com and start typing, but if you go to drive.google.com, you can create a folder architecture, even color code those folders, and then it lends itself to kids naming things more appropriately so they can find it easily, and all that's stored in the cloud, it's safe, et cetera. Simplicity and efficiency with organization, just making sure kids have critical supplies within arm's reach. The more steps there are to doing something, the less likely we are to do it. So, make sure that you make a habit pre-college of helping kids to get their enough pens and pencils and paper and lined paper and printer paper and everything that they might need, calculator, for the entire school year. Because if you have to go and buy colored pencils in order to do this assignment, I'm telling you, it's going to take a lot longer to get that done because there's more steps involved to do it. So that, getting in the habit of that is good. Whiteboards are wonderful. Noise canceling headsets are just great to have on hand. Digital timers. It's actually like a visual timer is fantastic. This is my favorite, the time timer. It's also on Amazon and it's on that list that I'm happy to send you guys. Chargers, everything we need charging strips and chargers for all the most common devices, since we can't really get anything done without computers or iPads these days. And I wanted to zoom in a little bit on planners. One trend that I'm seeing is that kids are abandoning planners completely in favor of these online portals, which started in college and then trickled down. And now even most elementary schools have these online portals, but they're not planners. And kids are not using a planner and just checking these online portals. And it's important that kids develop that skill of keeping their own planner, because it's a system that they can take with them. These online portals, are going, as kids matriculate, those go away. Planners are about planning ahead. Some kids need to start 3 or 4 days in advance or a week in advance for math. Other kids can do math the night before. And so it needs to be individualized. Well, those online portals are only edited by teachers, and some teachers are better and more consistent at updating those than others. So again, the online portal is a great resource, but people need their own planner. And so for a number of reasons, what are some best practices for using a planner? Well, writing something next to every class every day, even if you don't have every class every day, is really critical, because there might be work that you need to do for that class, even if you don't have it. Writing none if you truly have no work. That way you can differentiate like a blank, which is, I need to call somebody in the class because I forgot, versus none, where I've thought about it and I truly have no homework. Writing down the specifics of assignments. So don't just put bookwork and then you have to, it's like a treasure hunt to go figure out what page and everything. Actually put page 367, numbers 1 through 19 odd, put the actual assignment in there. Identify longer, kind of clunkier, chunkier assignments, big papers, tests, projects, and break those down into more manageable chunks and put those chunks into different days. That helps with prioritizing, starring the things that are due the next day. I call those poop stars, because that means my grade is going to directly be affected if I don't turn this in tomorrow. These are the things that you have to do today versus the things that you should start doing today, because the next few days are pretty rough. And then crossing out items as they're completed. I mean, many of us have written a to-do list for the day, realized something else we needed to do, and then added it to the list just so we could cross it out. There's something incredible about crossing things out. So what can parents do later to help their kids? So again, what I mean by that is when they're about to head off, or right when they head off to college, visit the campus again to learn the city and identify a grocery store and place for haircuts, and a movie theater and coffee shops and places to eat nearby, et cetera. So scope out the city, visit the campus, identify like the library and places to study, and that are outside of the bedroom. So that's all things that you can do before they go off to college. Identify places for basic needs. We talked about that: medication, haircuts, those kinds of things, groceries, lists of helpful resources. So kids are going to need help. The more steps, like I said, that are involved in getting something done, the less likely they are to do it. So if you can figure out, hey, if I need help in this class, I can go to this building, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays between this time and this time, there's folks who have taken that class who are there and available to help. Here is the Learning Resource Center. Here is the, you know, so identify those resources on campus so that all kids need to do is turn to that page or look on their bulletin board in their dorm room and reach out to somebody if they need help. Make it as easy as possible. Research professors. There's so many websites out there, Rate My Professor, you know, where you can like research professors and their teaching styles and things that other students have said about them. And oftentimes, if you're taking a general chemistry class or a calculus class, there's 3, 4, depending on how big the school is, sometimes 8 or 9 different professors that you can choose from. And sometimes choosing the right professor is more important than, you know, you might be willing to get up early in the morning for a professor that, you know, seems to have really, really fantastic ratings and match your learning style. Secure accommodations early. So for kids with diagnosed learning differences or learning disabilities who are entitled to accommodations, it's a pretty formalized process. Nothing is quick. And so getting that paperwork and submitted, filled out and submitted as early as possible so that you can be granted those accommodations is really important. And then establish communication codes. Kids don't want to interact with their parents. It starts when a teenager, but certainly when they go off to college. And so maybe create kind of a code system where you guys text each other if something's urgent or an emergency, or if they're really struggling, they can just, instead of going into all the details, they can send you a word and you know that they're struggling and you can kind of pay them a visit and see what you can do to help. So that's a nice suggestion too. I know we want to leave some time for Q&A and we're running short on time. And so you know, this is how you can reach out to us, info@saotg.com. You can call us 713-665-GAME or 4263. Our website here has a lot of wonderful blogs on a variety of topics completely for free, and we add a new one every single week. You can also sign up for our newsletter there, which is once a month, that has also additional great information. We're on Instagram at SAOTG, on Facebook at Staying Ahead of the Game. And so please don't be shy. You could find me on LinkedIn to keep in touch too. We're active. We have a business page there, and my personal page is very active. I love questions. Anything that I can do to help, bounce ideas off of me or us, my office. And if you want that Amazon link for those supplies that represent our favorites, there's nothing in it for me. I don't get a cut or anything like that. Happy to share it with you. You know, just shoot my office an email at info@saotg.com. My direct email is heyevan, HEYEVAN, heyevan@saotg.com. And so feel free to reach out to me directly or info@saotg.com, and we're happy to share that information. And then before we move to Q&A, I just really wanted to thank Dr. Ron and all of Dr. Ron's colleagues here. I wanted to thank all the sponsors, the Hub Fusion, who's the other sponsor?
ADDASR.
Pam and ADDASR, of course, very involved there too. Wonderful organizations. Wanted to thank all of you for having me. These are fun for me, and I really appreciate it, and happy to take any questions in whatever time we have left.
Evan, I think that was an outstanding job. I want to throw a few things in here. It's how to know if you need to refer somebody to Evan for a child that's getting ready. Very simple. Number one, if your child can't get themselves up, they're not going to college. You don't need to send them. They won't make it to class. Number two, and he covered a lot of this, are they aware of time? Do they know how much time it takes them from the time they wake up to the time they get out the door? If they're in the shower for 30 minutes in the morning, I guarantee you this is not going to be a good plan to send them to college. So it's time management. Are they okay with activities of daily living? Do they take care of their day, you know, what they need to do to become very efficient at daily living? Can they advocate for themselves? He mentioned this. Yes, a lot of kids hate talking to humans. They'll text all day long, but they hate talking to humans. They interview terribly. So if they're not good, if they're too afraid to go and ask a professor for help, they're probably not quite ready to go off to college. Can they manage their medications? I hate to say it, but if you want to get into a senior citizen home, that's the fastest way to get your mother or father into a senior citizen home, is that they can't manage their medicines. Again, back to the thing, you can't send them to college if they can't take care of that simple thing. And can they manage their addictions? And I'm specifically talking about the biggest failure mode we have in college right now for boys is they can't manage video gaming. They can't self-control. what are they going to do? Go to class or play games? They're going to play games. So if they can't manage their time and take care of work first, they're not ready to go to college. All of them need to go see Evan. Now, questions. I had to put that out there, Evan. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I talked kind of fast. I had a lot of information to share, but any questions, happy to take them. Jump right in and unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself. Oh, come on. Did I do that good of a job? I mean, I've done this before, but come on, somebody's got to have a question.
I guess a good question is, what's the duration of the what you do, and what is the cost involved? I mean, that's
Sure. No, great question. So, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. That wasn't my function of being here, but we work, start with at least a couple times a week. Typical sessions are about, an hour to an hour and a half. Working on with a focus on those executive function skills, organization, time management, study skills, certain aspects of social skills, and all those other topics that I presented today fall nicely under one of those categories. And then we interweave as needed, and we identify learning gaps or struggles with note taking, kind of, et cetera. We weave that into the work that we're doing. And so the cocktail of kind of traditional subject tutoring, scaffolding support, along with the executive function support that I call academic coaching, varies from session to session based on the needs of the student. We absolutely, while most of our kids are middle school, high school, I don't even want to say that anymore, because we see a growing number of kids in college, especially with the increased openness to kind of virtual help now. So we have a lot of kids that we see in person when they're back, and then continue to support them while they're in college. And there was a huge increase over the last couple of years due to the impact of COVID on kids and their education, and how we have asked kids to really flex their executive function muscles in a new way with all the abrupt pivots. We're going back to school. We got to shut it down for 2 weeks. We're going back. We've had to call upon, we've asked kids to really flex some muscles that they don't have to flex quite so often. And for kids in college who are managing themselves without that fully developed frontal lobe, we see a lot more college kids now. And so happy to offer support. I have a big office in Washington, D.C. So we are helping folks out of there as well. And we've got kids all over the country, and actually some out of the country, Scotland, Hong Kong, Mexico, Canada, that we're helping. So if you need help, let us know. Our approach in terms of fees is very straightforward, and I'd like to think pretty fair. For 16 years, we haven't changed it. There's a pretty nominal onboarding fee, about a new student initiation fee. It's about $100. There's an optional new student evaluation, which is not diagnostic in nature, where we'll come out and just make sure that we have the objectives really, really clear, so that we can individualize and personalize the experience for your child and understand the other stressors that may be impacting school. And then after that, everything is hourly. The rates range from $100 to $150 an hour. Most are right in between. And we have a 24-hour cancellation policy, so I don't hold anybody hostage. If something's not working, I don't want to continue. I'd like to figure out why and try to make some adjustments. But if it's just not working, it wasn't what you had in mind, we can stop and you'll never get another bill. I've always felt like that's fair. And if I'm ever in a position to help, or you think we might be in a position to help, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk to you about your individual circumstances. And before we go here, because I know we're short on time, the two nicest things that you can ever give somebody are time and attention. And all of you gave me both today, and I really appreciate that. 16 years in running, and these are still really fun for me. So thank you again to the sponsors. Thank you, Ron, for hosting this, for inviting me, and thank you everybody for your attention.
And thank you
Evan?
so much. This was amazing. Sorry, go ahead and do the question.
Evan, I just had a quick question. I have a senior this year, so heading off to college, but they're going to be doing community college for a year. So we're thinking we're not really going off to college for about a year and a half now. What are some of the big things that I can do for that transition to community college?
So that's really great. And I would, those in the presentation, which I think is going to be made available for everybody after this. I know we're recording it. I assume that's for that purpose. And I'm completely fine with that. And I love that. I would refer to those slides, and you are in a unique position and have a wonderful opportunity for what I call sort of a half step to college, where you can hold their hand and still have some of that scaffolding in place as they are transitioning and getting used to that new kind of schedule. I don't know if your student's taking a full course load schedule or not, but either way, you have an opportunity to really see if they're ready, when they're ready, kind of to go off and flee the coop, and they're accomplishing college credits and earning college credits kind of toward college and ultimately graduating what may be the goal of from a four-year college, and so they're making big steps toward that. And it's I think more kids should do that. If it wasn't for the social component, for a kid who doesn't have any issues kind of socially and making friends, I think all kids should could go to community college before they go to a four-year college. It's more cost effective. The class sizes are smaller, more attention from the teacher. There's some scaffolding still at home in place, where they can practice some of that independence before they actually have to truly be independent. And so I think that's a great solution for everybody. And I applaud you for going that direction. And you're in a really neat and cool position to do some of those things I referred to in the slides and really see their progress and be able to send them off ultimately, if that's the goal, to a four-year college with even more confidence. So that's awesome, but my suggestions don't really change. You're just in an awesome position to hold their hand a little bit more while going through some of those suggestions.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to let you guys know that I was one of those failure to launch kids going to college. And I flunked out of my first semester at Memphis State University, made a 1.23 grade point average. You got to show up to class. And without that scaffolding, without that structure, was really tough on me. I could get myself up in a lot of other things, but I didn't have the structure. And so when they pulled my draft deferment and sent me to Vietnam instead, the military taught me all of this. So I think that there's an option also. If you don't want to go to Evan, start checking in the military for your kids. It will teach them every single thing right here and make them very successful. But again, I wish Evan was out there helping me when I was young.
Yeah.
And listen, a four-year college is not necessarily the trajectory for everybody. You know how much, during floods and sometime during COVID, how much some of the trades, like they were having a hard time. You wouldn't be surprised, you'd be floored how much plumbers were making, right? Master plumbers and master electricians. Mattress Mac has a trade school in collaboration with, I think, HCC, that's unbelievably popular. So there's a lot of different trajectories. It doesn't need to be a four-year college. It could be a community college, an associate's degree. It could be a trade school. But again, it's important to have goals and always be working towards something, and to set those goals meaningfully and strategically, and then always be taking steps every single day toward those goals. But four-year college isn't necessarily the trajectory for everybody.
True. Any more questions out there?
No
Stephanie,
other questions in the chat.
you want to take over and shut us down, Stephanie?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Evan, for giving us all of this wonderful information. I want to sign up for myself so I can work on my own executive functioning. I got really excited. I was like, how old do you take? So I will be sending this recording out to anyone. So if you have anyone who is interested, feel free to share that link. Or if they go ahead and register, the register will stay active all day. And I will send that out to everyone who registered. So just reach out if you have any questions. My information is in the chat as well. And we look forward to see you at the next one on April 20th. Okay. So it's already on the website. Just if you just want to Google Fusion Academy events, and we'll go ahead and get you set up. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Evan.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye,
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Evan. It was amazing.
Thank
You did such a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was excellent, excellent, Evan.
We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you doing this for us. This is
Of course.
so wonderful.
Did you tell them what the next one was about?
The next one, our next discussion is going to be about food for the brain.
Yeah.
About nutrition, fueling that brain so that it can be the best, perform at the best it can. So
And it's going to be co-presented by,
Lorianne Moreau, she works at the Houston Brain Center. And she's a brain health coach.
Very nice.
so looking forward to seeing you guys then.
Wonderful. Take care,
All right.
everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Are you in me?